ياخذ التفاصيل. بدل ما تقعد تدور في الانترنت تاخذ المعلومات ما تكون كافيه، جبنا لكم مصدر فائزه بعده جوائز كوسبلاير من 10 سنين يمكن تقريبا من 10 سنين. ما بدي اطول عليكم اكثر من هيك لانه انتم ما بدكم تشوفوني انا. بليز رحبوا معي ايات سليم على المسرح.
Welcome to Cosplay 101. I'm going to help you start your cosplay because we all know the first step is always the hardest. So, okay, so who am I? I'm Ayat Salim. I'm a cosplayer. I've been cosplaying since 2015. Back in 2015, in like one of the first Film Festival cosplay competitions, I won third place, which was fun. I also won third place last year, 2 years ago now, in the craftsmanship category, where the focus is on the making. And last GeekEnd, back in February last year, I was one of the judges, so I think I'm kind of qualified for this. Okay. So this is going to be the roadmap we're going to be going on for this journey. We're going to start out by knowing what is cosplay, because that's usually the biggest question. It's like, what is it? Why some people cosplay? And then easy ways to get into cosplay, such as casual cosplay, and these kinds of like easy ways for you to try it out and see how it works for you. Then we're going to see how you can improve your cosplay and take it to the next level in the future. And then if you want to make your costumes, I'll give you some tips on where you can buy ready-made cosplay, as well as where you can find patterns so you can follow it along when you make your own cosplay. And then we'll talk about cosplay etiquette, knowing how to behave as a cosplayer and how to behave around cosplayers. And finally, last but not least, we'll talk about cosplay competitions. Okay, so what is cosplay? You see all the people here? They're all cosplayers, local in Qatar. The word cosplay is a portmanteau of 2 words. It's when you combine 2 words together. It combines the word costume and roleplay. The idea is, for the costume, it talks about the visual things that you can add to yourself, such as your outfit, your wig, your hijab, and the props you're holding, like a weapon or, let's say, a notebook or a Death Note. And then the role play is 2 aspects. You've got the acting, which is how you're doing active stuff, how you interact with people, how you talk, and things like that. And then posing, which is for pictures. Like, you can just stand like this, or you can like hold like fighting. So it's kind of about that. Now, what can you cosplay? I think is a very important question, because is there like a limit? Are you only allowed to do certain things, or like does it have to be only anime or something? So let's look at some of the cosplayers out there. You've got a bunch of people who do a lot of video game characters, such as Freddy Fazbear, and Armor from Monster Hunter World, and even a character from Belgium. Basically, all 3 of those are from video games, but they look completely different. You can then go into anime characters. So you've got Gojo, which can be like very complicated, very simple. Like cosplay is a lot of things. You can also just do comic book characters, such as Deadpool. You've got characters from films, anime films, but still with the hijab, which you can see. You can also go for TV show characters, which can also be anime. And then finally, you can do an original character. Like this one, the one I'm wearing now, it's my own character. I decided how she looks. I drew the picture based on the cosplay instead of the other way around. So you can be creative. You can even take a character that is not human and make them human. Such as this. So you can see that it's a fluffy character, but she made it into a human version with a hijab and everything. So all of these are local cosplayers, and you can see the brains of creativity. You can even go and like read a book, like the description, and that people can't really judge you. Now, why cosplay? There's a lot of reasons to cosplay. You might want to open conversations with people. You might like playing with people. People love it when 2 people are cosplaying the same character. It's not a competition, it's fun. And then you can also just enjoy the crafting. You've got some people who like the whole process of making the cosplay themselves. Or, I don't know, maybe you can it. So it is like a valid reason. It's not the only reason, but it's fun. Now, I'm gonna give you an easy way for you to start getting into cosplay. There's a term called casual cosplay, which is a way for you to try out the hobby, see how it tastes. Like, just dip your foot into the water, see how it feels. You can try that by using some casual cosplay, closet cosplay. So the reason it's called closet cosplay is the idea is to use clothes that you have already in your closet. So let's take the example of Kiki from Kiki's delivery service. When you look at her, there's a few things that pop in your face right away. You've got the dress and the bag, right? Just get a dress that looks like it. Get a bag. People will start to like, okay, take it more. You've got the ribbon, you've got the shoes. So kind of like take the colors, what visually looks like the character, and try that. You can also just get a t-shirt. There are people who make t-shirts that are inspired by character designs. I think there's people here, like one of the tables in the economic series also like started some shirts that are inspired by character designs. So it's a way for you to like try it out, see how it goes. You can also just get a jacket. You can find a jacket that like represents a specific character and put it on and you go. Like you don't have to have the whole costume. You can just have the jacket itself and over normal clothes. And then people will see you and recognize the character. Funky hats. There's also people here selling hats. You can just wear a hat that looks like a character's hat, looks like a character's head, and it's like the way for you to see how you feel from the item. You can also go for props, such as like just hold the magical staff. That's not the hat. Sorry. So these are some of my old costume props. Some of them have been old. So makeup also. You can just go and find a character you like that has a very iconic like scars or face paint and things like that. And you can also find people either do it at home with makeup, or you can find tables in a lot of events where people are doing face paints, and you can use it as a way to test it out, see how you feel. Now, you tried it out. You liked it. You liked it. Different aspects of it. You want to take it to the next level. So, how can you do that? The easiest way is just add details. So, we're gonna go back to the beginning. Costume and roleplay. So when it comes to the costume, you can start adding accessories. Let's say you went with Kiki. Now you're like, okay, I went the dress, I got the shoes and the ribbon. I'll get a broomstick, halter. This way you're kind of becoming more and more like the character. You can now go and get shoes that are more fitting for the character's design. You can buy props if you went for t-shirts. You can even just style your hijab differently. You can start wearing wigs or get better wigs. You can work on your makeup, try to do some contouring and things like that. Or even just take the character and make it into your own version. So you start it out with something simple and then take it to the next level. The next thing you can do is with your performance. It's about how you pose. Like, I can just stand in the picture like this, or I can just go confident. So these kinds of stuff is like how you pose, how you act. You start changing your tone. Like with this pirate, she's more posh and vain, so she talks like this. My name is Captain Rose, Diamond. Thank you. These kinds of stuff. It's like how you move, how you talk. And then, I'll give you a fine example of me. This is me trying to do a casual cosplay of Ariel from Little Mermaid. You've got the red hair, hijab, you've got the purple shirt, and the green pants. Easy. You can kind of see it, kind of not. This was the first time I did it. Afterwards, I tried going and taking it to the next level. And you can see the difference. Like, it's the exact same outfit. Like, I didn't change the shirt, didn't change anything. All I changed is the way I styled the hijab. I added a flower from the under the CC and the seashell bag. And just standing differently, it feels more like, oh yeah, I can tell. Like, this is Little Mermaid. So you can like take it that way. Now, let's say you liked it, you tried your casual cosplay, now you want to take something more detailed. But you're not really into making things, you just enjoy the roleplay parts. You're not really thinking about like, I don't want to learn how to sew things like that. You can buy ready-made costumes. We live in an age now where it's so easy to find online websites that sell cosplay that you can just go online and read it, but you need to keep some things in mind. There's a bunch of stores that are dedicated to either cosplay, outfits and rigs and props, or even just general handmade things, which is like Etsy. And the idea, these I double checked, they do ship to Qatar, which is good. So if you want to take a picture of the screen, just for memory later. Etsy, the cool thing about it is you are dealing directly with a certain person instead of a factory. So you're more likely to get something more unique and tailored. Easy Cosplay and Ooh Cosplay, those have like mass-produced, but probably also handcrafted. But you'll be able to find more, like, slightly cheaper, because it's not exactly new to you. Like, you can find things that are ready to ship. But you are kind of limited to what they have to offer. So it's like you win some, you lose some. AliExpress is also another place. They have a lot of variety of different like qualities of things. I will say though, don't do Shein and Temu. If you want to do a t-shirt from Shein, sure. You want to do like shirts, like shoes, something simple, don't go for cosplay. If you do ever look up cosplay on Temu or Shein, make sure to name a character. Don't just write cosplay. Do not. Now, you can also buy locally. You have a lot of people in Qatar who make props for people, they take commissions, they've got people who make wigs, like Ingon Nose does props, Zayn does wigs, and the others also do the same thing. So you'll find even some tables over in this kingdom who are selling, like they do take commissions. So always like follow cosplayers and see if they are open to commissions, or for example, they're selling real costumes. If you're following them online, like on social media, you'll be able to find out whenever they're selling their things. And last but not least, just go to the Halloween section. A lot of like different stores, like Carrefour, actually I forget Carrefour, Lulu, these kinds of places. If you go to the kids section, you'll find some old like costumes. There's a place called Events in Royal Plaza, which sells, you know, costumes for Halloween, but for all adults instead of just for kids. Now, tips, because we've all tried going online to buy things. It's not easy. You need to make sure, if you go to a website, that they have at the bottom a photo review, where they allow people to post pictures of themselves and the stuff they bought. This will be your easiest way to make sure it's like, okay, this is not going to be a scam. This actually exists. So look for that. You can also look for your size. If you've been to any store to buy clothes, you know that you can be a size 14 in one store, go to the next store, no, you're size 12. Go to the other one, oh, it's size 16. What the hell? Sizes are not measurements. Always have a tape measure, measure yourself, and most websites will have a chart such as this one, where it will tell you, it's like, okay, this size has these measurements. Find the size that matches your biggest measurement, because you can make things smaller, it's hard to make things bigger. It's always important to like keep that in mind, because you can make alterations to it after you get it. Another thing to keep in mind is buying full cosplay is not really the cheap option. It's going to be expensive, especially if you're going for like handcrafted stuff. So make sure you're following your budget, you're not going over budgets and buying things that you can't afford. Another thing to keep in mind, we live in Qatar. So shipping times for other people in other places, easy, oh, it will come in 5 days. You live in Qatar 6 weeks. So try to keep in mind when events are happening and try to allot time for it so that you have time to, if it gets delayed, if it gets stuck in customs, if it's too big or something like that, so that you have time before the event to fix it up and iron it and do all of that. You don't want it to arrive the day of. And finally, alterations. You can just take your costume to a tailor, tell him, like, hey, this skirt is a bit too long, can you make it shorter for me? or it's like, oh, it's not fitting like here or something, and they'll do the fitting for you. So this is a good way for you to take like cheap or even good costumes that are not fitting and just take them to a tailor, let them fix it up for you. Now, let's say you're on the other side. You like the idea, you tried it, and you're like, oh, I can make this better, and you want to be making. You can go and find patterns online. A pattern is a blueprint. It's basically giving you all of the measurements you need. It's like somebody did the step of the design for you. And thankfully, a lot of people make their business these days just making patterns. So, let's say you want to get a costume. You can find these on Etsy, for example, just as another option. Or just going to a specific cosplayer's website. Some of them just, like, they post their stuff on social media and then they're like, okay, now you can get the pattern. So you see them work through it and then they make the pattern available for everybody. Then, this is what you usually get. They're going to show you what the character looks like, what part of the pattern you're getting. So it will always, this is another thing to keep in mind. You see how it says PDF? If you're trying to buy a costume and you see the word PDF, you're not buying a costume, you're buying a pattern. You can even find like more detail. The cool thing about this as a way to get into the cosplay making hobby is that it will give you a step-by-step idea on how to do the thing. This way you're not kind of messing around, not knowing which process or like step by like the order operations, let's say. And you can find them like the usual tell you like, okay, this pattern is for this size, we'll have like a different options and things like that. And sorry, for ready-made costumes, ready-made patterns, you can just find patterns in, sorry, I got confused, tips. If you let's say you learned how to make cosplay in Qatar, there is a thing about when you're sewing called seam allowance. If you're looking at American-based patterns, you're going to notice that if you make it the way you would make patterns here, you're going to get a much bigger outfit than you were planning on. So, try to see if it says seam allowance is included. Try to find ways that people, like, the way they structure the pattern is different, so try to keep that in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is the same issue with the sizing. It's the same thing. Go for your biggest size in the measurements, measure yourself, and buy the pattern accordingly. Lastly, mock-ups. As you can see here, I've got this, like, one step of this costume, and you can see it's like, okay, this is nice. Thing is, this was done with like the cheapest fabric I could find. This was like 5 reals per meter, and it just helped me see like, okay, how does this work? Does it fit the size correctly, everything? So I was able to, like, for example, the panel in the middle, I made it out of the same fabric and it was like, too short, too small, da da da. So I just ripped that part out and made another version. And now after that, I'm making a second version with the actual proper fabric. This way I'm not wasting the good quality fabric on a mock-up. So the whole idea with mock-ups is it will help you save time and money because you don't want to be cutting into the good fabrics and then, oops, doesn't fit. I don't have enough seam allowance to adjust the size. Gonna have to buy a new costume. So always try to do mock-ups. One cool way to do mock-ups is just to get like old bed sheets, things like that, like you are going to throw away and just make your costume out of that. And finally, fabric stores. This is the big question. Where do you go? We live in Qatar. You go online, and they're like, oh, go to Jolands or go to this other stores. Like, they don't really tell you where to find these things in Qatar. So, there are different areas in Qatar that are specifically specialized in fabric stores, such as Souk Al Ali, like back in Souk Waqf, these kinds of places. And then one, like my favorite area to go to is behind Royal Plaza, because there's a whole area that is selling fabrics. There's like fabric supplies stores, like for thread and things like that, or accessories, purse, these kinds of things. as well as a roundup, which is good for the next step, which is making props. If you are making props, most of the people online will be talking about EVA foam. EVA foam is a very nice material, like you can see this one. It's really light, which is cool. It's just wobbly. So, for example, if you're trying to make a prop out of EVA foam, you don't want it to be, wobbly. You can buy cheaper, like this is just a 7 reals plant stick from Dyson. You just get it, and suddenly you have a steady sword. Then you want to take it and paint it. If I take this and try to paint it right away, it's gonna suck up the paint, and it's just gonna look like full of holes. So the idea with any paint is you want to make sure that the material you're using takes paint. So for this, for example, you need to give it a coat, or a couple of coats actually, of glue. For example, Mod Podge, which is one that people usually recommend online, and it is found in Geneva, of all places. But if you don't have that, you can go to Raunaq and just get some EVA, not EVA, PVA glue, which is just white glue, or wood glue. And just give this a couple of coats of that. This way, when you come to paint, the foam has absorbed all of the glue, and no longer has the space to suck up your paint. So you'll get a more nice and finished look. And then you have other options. I've seen this is more old school, but for these, I made this with fiberglass and resin, which brings me to the most important points: safety. I made this, and I was wearing a surgical mask. Do not do what I did. You can buy a mask, you can afford ventilation. It's really hard to buy a new look. You don't want to hurt your lungs, your skin, or anything. Always be safe. Wear masks, wear gloves, be in a well-ventilated area. Try to avoid working, let's say, in a small room, like in the closet, because all of these fumes are going to build up over time, and it's going to hurt you. So always be safe. Another reason why I don't recommend doing what I did is you can see this keyblade has been snapped in half. The reason for that, it's too heavy for its own weight. These two weigh, I think, oh, by the way, it's basically supposed to connect, but because of how heavy it is, just connects. So try to keep that in mind when you're doing your stuff, to put some supports inside. Like when I made it, I didn't know what I was doing. This was back in 2015. So I didn't know I had to do something where I'm doing supports. This one, on the other hand, I made it out of a broomstick. Just the handle of a broomstick, then snapped it in half and put a wooden rod inside. This way, there's nowhere for things to bend out of shape, and they hold themselves. The only thing is, to keep in mind, I need to hold it from the bottom so it doesn't, I hold it like this, not like that. So try to be creative when you're making your own props, to find ways to work around what you have. For this, I added clay inside this thing to make it possible to screw it to the handle and hold it straight. The idea is sometimes you just need to test things out a couple of times before you finally find a way that actually works for you. For this, I tried to attach it to the plastic. It didn't stick. Turns out, super glue does not it was super glue that wasn't working with the foam. Basically, I had to test the different materials and basically glue fabric to the super glue to the clay to be able to then glue the clay to the foam. Basically, sometimes you just need to Frankenstein things to make them work. This one, on the other hand, is lighter than this half. And the reason for this is this whole thing is made with EVA foam, except you've got a PVC pipe, which is very light. It's just plastic. You can try to do, so the reason I did this one to be detachable is I can travel with it. I can put it in my bag, just put it in the luggage, take it apart, remove the flowers, remove everything, and put it in the bag. And because it is lightweight, I can just take it around with me, carry it. So when you're making your own stuff, if you're using heavy material, try to keep that in mind. Find ways that you can rest yourself when you're holding it, places you can put it down. If you're going to be holding like a big, let's say, plush the whole day, eventually your hand is going to hurt. So try to find stuff, for example, a way to attach it to your belt so this way you can let go and only like pretend to be holding it while you're taking photos. Okay. Another thing to keep in mind, so you saw how I was using the PVC pipe or the stick. I got that garden stick from Daiso long before I knew that I was going to make a sword. I just saw it and I'm like, this is cheap. It was 7 reals and it looks like it will be very sturdy. So I just bought it, put it on the side, and then once I decided, I want to make a key blade like a sword, I have that thing to use. So kind of open your eyes whenever you're going shopping, whether like in the most random places. For example, I was going to a store behind my house, like just another supermarket. I went to the hardware section and I found contact cement, which is a really good glue to use for EVA foam, because once it's stuck, it is what I use for the sword. Like these are 3 different sheets of foam, and basically they are fused together. It's impossible to pull them apart. But with contact cement, safety is again important. Anytime you buy any type of glue, read the instructions. It will say highly flammable, so avoid working with it in a high place. It will tell you it has fumes, so avoid breathing it. Things like that. Okay? Now, if you are doing this with ready-made patterns, you'll find the same thing where people have made a whole pattern that you can follow for the armor, for example, or for the weapon. And now we go back to making your own patterns. So, if we're talking about clothes, again, I took this from a ready-made pattern, but what I did is I looked at the pieces and then rearranged where the colors go. So even though this is from a ready-made pattern, I have made it myself, my own. Like I changed the color. They were telling, follow this color scheme and everything. I'm like, okay, no, let me take it. You can find like Burda magazines, where they have, like it's a magazine that they sell sometimes in Virgin even, or online websites. Burda is a good one to go to for patterns, and then you can kind of adjust it. Okay? You can also splice things together. This is a pen that I bought from Lulu. I bought a second one, the exact same color, a different color, exact same size, and just cut this one up and sew it onto the other one. This way I was able to make myself a striped hat. Or you can, let's say you get a t-shirt, and it's like, okay, I need it to be like shorter, so like just cut it up. So you can buy like ready-made stuff and then adjust it to fit your work. There's also the plastic wrap method, where you just find, for example, if you're doing a sleeve, put plastic wrap and make sure you put plastic wrap, because you don't want to put the tape on directly on your clothes, and then cover it with, let's say, duct tape or masking tape, and then draw the shape that you want your thing to look like, and cut it out. Try not to cut the shirt. I did cut this one. I ended up like making it as I was cutting. So keep that in mind. But the cool thing about this is you're gonna get something that perfectly fits you. But you want to be doing it in such a way that you want to do it so that there are seams in proper places, because you want the thing to hold this shape. Another way you can do it is draping, which is how I did this. Basically, this one is like if you want a mannequin, a very cheap thing to do is making a duct tape mannequin, where you wear some old clothes, again with the saran wrap, and then duct tape. Do it with somebody else. Make sure you have rested before you do it, because You're gonna be stuck in that for at least half an hour. Put plenty of layers of duct tape, and then let your friend cut you out, or your mom, and then stuff it with, let's say, some old pillows, and you get yourself a nice mannequin that is more or less your size. Then you can just put the fabric on top of it, like pin it, and then you can draw on the stuff. Basically, it's called draping, where you put the fabric and slowly build it up. This whole pattern, that's how I did it. I basically put some sheets of fabric on the mannequin and cut them up to make myself my own pattern. This one, I also did the same thing, where with the duct tape, just slowly drew the pieces on and made the pattern out of that. Another way is kind of building things up. So this is a different cosplayer called Snipple, and what she did is just build the structure of the hat out of cardboard, and slowly, because it's an organic shape for a dragon, she was able to slowly build it up with clay, I think, or paper mache. So if you're doing something organic, you can get away with being a little more loose with it, because natural things are not perfect. Lastly, let's get to where you live in Doha. So, a thing to keep in mind is respect the culture. We live in a conservative society. You can't wear cosplay that is a bit too revealing. You don't want to be walking around like short skirts, everything shirts, like we live in a conservative society, and we need to respect the society. You don't want to be a bit too, like, you don't want to ruin the reputation of the community and making what you do reflect on the whole community. You need to respect the culture. I've watched things happen in other countries where people unrelated to cosplay did some bad things in an event, and suddenly cosplay was more or less bad. Even though the cosplayers were behaving properly, you can get a few bad apples, and they can ruin it for everybody else. So try to think of like respecting the culture as more of a challenge than a restriction. This way, like when I'm doing hijabi characters, I'm like, okay, when I wear this, do I feel comfortable with it, or do I feel like the skirt is still too short? It's like, okay, just make the skirt longer, or find ways to don't just go and wear skin-toned undershirts. Get creative, find colors that match the fabric, and things like that match the vibe of the character, and use that to make it more respectful of the culture. Don't be disruptive. This applies to both cosplayers and non-cosplayers. You do not want to be standing in the middle of the event, laughing in people's faces as loud as you can. Yes, okay, this is something the character does, but not everybody has signed up to be terrified, okay? You don't want to be running around and like just swinging your sword, let's say, at people's tables and things like that because, oh, I'm playing a chaotic character that really likes to mess with you. You don't want to be disruptive. Again, if you're dealing with cosplayers, don't say it's like, oh, I'm gonna go with like spook this person because they're wearing a character or like a scaredy cat. Just be respectful. If you don't do it to normal people, don't do it cosplayers. Next, ask before you take photos. Whether you are in cosplay or out of cosplay, you need to ask people for their permission. Maybe they are in the middle of eating, or they have just like lost a piece of their armor and they're trying to run to go and fix it up, and you're like, picture. Like, just ask like, hey, can I take a picture? And if you are a cosplayer, you can say no, which is important. You don't have to say yes. It's okay to ask, and it's okay to say no. Next, don't touch people without asking. Do not go and see, it's like, oh, this person is wearing a colorful wig, so I can just go and see it. What kind of like, oh, it's funny color. Don't do that. You should not do something to a cosplayer that you would not do to a normal person. Would you go up to somebody and just like look at their skirt? No, you say, it's like, oh, did you make this? Can I take a look? And they can say yes or no. Or somebody will come and it's like, yeah, oh no, I made this and show it to you. So, like, just be normal. Cosplay is not consent. Just because somebody is wearing cosplay doesn't mean they're okay with you just going and like running up and hugging them from behind, things like that, which still reflects on the fact that we live in a conservative country. Another thing is don't go up to people and comment on their accuracy. Do not post like, oh, aren't you like the wrong skin tone for this character? This character is supposed to be white and you're not. Don't do that. If somebody asks you, like, oh, I want to take this to the next level, how do you think I can improve it? Answer that. But don't go to somebody who's like, oh, but this character is supposed to be skinny, so why are you wearing this? Don't do that. It's not nice and it's unnecessary. You saw when we went and talked about what you can cosplay. It's unlimited. You can be cosplaying a creature that has blue skin and you have skin sensitivity. You can't paint your skin. It's okay. You are not in a competition. When you're wearing cosplay on a day-to-day basis, like doing events, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be accurate. It has to be fun. Okay? And this one is important. Cosplayer is not the character. If somebody's cosplaying a genocidal character, such as Azula, you don't go up to them and like yell at them because, oh, you must like killing people. It's like, no, that's the character, not me. Don't just go up to people like, oh, I hate you, and move. Because like, you hate the characters. Like, just like don't even mention not liking people's characters. Like, what benefit is that doing? Lastly, it is okay to ask what the character is. And again, this goes both ways. It's okay for people to come and ask you as a cosplayer, who are you cosplaying? Some random questions I've gotten is like, oh, are you Hamilton? It's like, no, just because I saw a jacket doesn't mean it's Hamilton. But I'm not like, oh my god, how dare you. It's okay. People, not everybody knows everything. Maybe you're wearing a character from the most popular anime coming out now, and you run into somebody who does not like to watch anime, they just play video games. They're gonna ask you, and you're allowed to tell them. And same goes for you. If you see a character and you're like, oh, I think this is X character, and you go to the person who's like, hey, is this X? And they're like, it's Y. That's okay. They're not gonna judge you for the rest of your life for not knowing the character they're wearing. It's okay. And last but not least, tag people on Instagram. If you bought the cosplay from somebody, mention it. If you're taking pictures of people, try to ask them like, hey, what's your social media handle so I can tag you online? This way they can find the picture later and they will be very grateful, because a lot of people when they're cosplaying, they don't have the time to take pictures of themselves, so they have to go and find people who tag them. So it's always really useful to tag people on Instagram and other social media. Another thing too would be nice if you had somebody take photos of you, for example, with the photo shoot, also tag the photographer. This way other cosplayers will say, it's like, oh, this person is a photographer and they can do really good photographs for cosplayers. Let me get in touch with them. And this way you're kind of like sharing love, let's say. And last but not least, I want to reiterate, don't go up to somebody and tell them about something they need to fix if they can't fix it within 30 seconds. So, if something has fallen off and they just need to adjust it, you can say, hey, by the way, your like jacket slipped. That's fine. Don't go up to somebody who's like, oh hey, like your shoe should be in high heels and not flat. What's the person gonna do with it? So try to keep that in mind when you're talking to people about anything, even normal people. Don't go and tell somebody, like, hey, this shirt doesn't look good, I'm usually wearing something else. You wouldn't do that. Don't do it to cosplayers. Now, this is my favorite section because competitions are fun. You are not gonna win everything you participate in, but it's always fun to challenge yourself with it. And again, it's gonna be in two categories. You've got the performance and the craftsmanship. And sometimes cosplay competitions will be doing both. So try to, whenever you apply to a cosplay competition, make sure that you know what the criteria are. They'll tell you, it's like, oh, this is going to be focusing on your performance, or they'll have a category for craftsmen, or they'll just be like, we don't have the budget to be doing a very detailed cosplay competition, so it will be all open to just one category. Now, if you are performing, you need to focus, like they're going to be grading you on your actions, how you're moving, if it's a fight scene, how you're standing, how you're fighting, your demeanor. Is this character confident and you're talking about it like this? Or let's say you're doing a character and you go and, I don't know, you hold the flower and say, like, talk to it. People think you have a paper on your hand that you're reading. I did that. My first competition, that's what I did. I was holding an object, a prop, and people thought I was reading from the paper. They're like, next time, try not to write your speech on your hands. Like, oops. So try to be like creative. You don't have to be completely like going crazy, but you want to do something that even if somebody didn't watch the show that you're cosplaying from or played the video game you're cosplaying from, they can follow what's happening. And finally, that's what you can do, a skit. You can have like a beginning, middle, end, like have a bit of a story that happens. Another thing you can do is avoid sometimes talking on the stage. You don't want to be holding a mic. So another thing people do is pre-record your audio. Just have the conversation, record it, and include it with the music. This way you just have to move your lips this way. These kinds of stuff. So, I'll give you an example from last year's.
تنفس اللهب الشكل التاسع عندكم.
See how they're doing things in slow motion? They're really emphasizing what's happening. Even if I don't know these characters. If you know these characters, you'll be more emotionally invested. But if you don't, it's still sad. Like, you watch that. If you have never watched the show, you can still tell, oh, those two people were fighting. One of them kept the other guy until he really died, and then died himself. It's kind of like, you still understand what's happening even if you don't know the details. So this is a good skill. It's like, you don't want to be doing like a 5-second speech about something where people who don't know it don't even know what you're talking about. So try to keep that in mind, and these are their Instagrams. Now, performance category is the one I avoid because I know my skills are not in performance. My skills are craftsmanship, because that is the thing I love cosplay, about cosplay the most, obviously. So, with craftsmanship category, you're going to usually be graded on the different techniques you use. Did you stick to just like, did you just do sewing? Or did you also make armor? Did you also make a prop? The more different skills that you do and do well, the more kind of people will appreciate the work. Another thing is sewing. Like, this is going into more details. So this is actually the first mock-up of this. So when I made this one, I actually made it with a third fabric, and it's like, okay, it's too short, it's da-da-da-da-da. So you're gonna be looked at how well you've sewed things together, how well you finished your seams. If you like grab your clothes and just look at the inside the thing, you'll find sometimes like the way the edges of the seam allowance and things like that are finished, it's kind of nice and tight. You don't want to be having like threads going all over the place. So they will be grading you on that. Another thing is your craft. Did you make this thing yourself? One thing you can do, like especially with this keyblade, I bought a pattern off of Etsy. It gave me the general shape of the keyblade, and then I looked at it and modified it to fit my vision of it more, and adjusted it to be replaceable, things like that. Like, you can take a pattern that is ready and modify it. As long as you're not buying the whole thing ready, you're fine. Now, how well does this thing look? How well does it hold up? Like with this one, I actually had to remake some of the stuff. I participated in a cosplay competition and a lot of the stuff were not holding well, the painting wasn't great. I just signed up for another competition the next year, fixed things up, and this time I won. So you can just, this is another thing I really want to emphasize, is you can build things up over time. You don't have to have your perfect costume on day one. Like with this, with the Kyrie cosplay, the one with the keyblade, I used to just have a shadow that matched the height of the character. Until a friend of mine suggested, like, hey, have you like tried doing it almost like the way, in a way that fits it more? And that's how I ended up with this thing. This is basically just a little like amta that you will put usually under your hair, under your hijab. And I more or less just sewed pieces of fabric in a way that implied the haircut. You can look at this and it's like, short hair. It kind of like doesn't have to be perfect. And like for me, I do have other things I want to change up to it, but I don't have to. I like it. I don't have the time. I don't know what other things. It's okay. Okay. Painting. You can paint fabric. Like if you have a character that has a design on their clothes or something, you can paint that. Just get some acrylic paint, paint it on. You'll be graded, so for example, on your props, how well you've painted them, if you've added shadows to make things more like visibly easy to understand. Like if there's structure in your stuff, you can add shadows into the corners and things like that to make it more readable. These are the kinds of things you'll be graded on. And lastly, unfortunately, in competitions, accuracy does matter, but a cool thing to keep in mind, if you made a decision to change something about the character, tell the judges. So, for example, with Kyrie, she had like a skirt, and I made it longer. I just mentioned that, like, oh, by the way, I made it longer on purpose. I didn't mess up without the last part. But like, if you do things on purpose, like you're making creative choices, people like that. Like, oh, you modified it. Don't not mention it, and then people will think, oh, you miscounted and just made your own costume wrong. Now, I'm gonna leave you with a few final remarks to keep in mind, okay? First, cosplay is fun. It's not a competition. You can compete, but just because you're cosplaying doesn't mean you're competing. You can build your cosplay over time. You can just like go with something simple. You didn't finish it. The first time I wore this costume in GeekEnd, I didn't have half of the stuff finished. Like not the pockets, not nothing. People didn't know. They're like, oh, cool costume. If you're making like special with original stuff, you can get away with doing however you want. Or you'd be like, oh, I made the hats, but I'm still like developing the rest of the costume. It's okay. Just take it easy and build things over time. Just have fun. And if you see people who are cosplaying something you like, let them know. The main reason people cosplay is so that people will share the love of the character with them. Like, just go up to somebody who's like, I love this show, you were cosplaying it, I love this character, I thought nobody else watched this show. Just be open to embracing everybody in the community and just having conversations, even with if I can find a cosplayer and just ask them, like, how did you make this? Maybe you'll learn techniques that you never thought of. So always just embrace the community and chat, communicate. Everybody who cosplays, I'm pretty sure, is more or less open to tell you, like for half an hour, how they made every single piece or how they styled it. Like, we are geeks, obviously, and we love to talk about the things we love. This is why we come to GeekEnd. Okay, now, last but not least, questions. Anybody who has questions, let me know and I'll try to answer. They're gonna give you a mic.
Does it work now? Yes. I do want to start making props.
Yeah.
Where do I find the EVA from?
Okay. الرونق and Jarir usually have craft foam. الرونق, especially the Q-Mall branch, usually has like big sheets, which is cool. Like, they usually call it a craft foam instead of EVA foam, so if you find something that says craft foam, it is more or less EVA foam.
Thank you. Would you recommend making like props out of like clay?
The thing about clay is it is heavy. Like, I've tried it before. This thing, like with the fiberglass, the heaviest thing about it is it's covered in clay and it's heavy. So if you're making small props with clay, you can do that, but as soon as you get like beyond 30 centimeters, it's gonna start getting heavy. So it's also not really safe. Like, if you hit somebody with something made out of clay, you're gonna damage them, it's gonna bruise. So sticking to, let's say, cardboard instead of EVA foam, hopefully is a bit safer.
How do you treat the fabric if you like don't have the right color?
Okay, I try to try multiple shops. Like, if I don't find the exact color I want, I just go find another shop. Like, I try to go and find something, but it doesn't have to be the exact same color. That's another thing to keep in mind. Red, yes, there are different shades of red, but if you're doing this just for yourself for fun, it doesn't have to be crimson red instead of rose red. So try to do that. There is fabric paints, but for that it like takes a whole other thing, like opens another can of worms. So just keep going, or just find something that is close enough.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you so much, and I hope I didn't overwhelm you with this video. And I hope to see you all in Cosplay next year at the next event. Hopefully this opened the path for you. Thank you.
خلونا نسمع مرة ثانية تحية لآيات سليم على البرزنتيشن الممتاز العملاق اللي تعلمتوا فيه الكوسبلاي 101 ورشة اللي هي الكوسبلاي. تمام. الحين انا عارف انتم تستنوا بقية البرامج، والبرنامج القادم راح يكون، خلينا نشوف شو عندنا اليوم. راح يكون في عندنا عرض نكمة للموسيقى بإذن الله على الساعة 8. أتأكد تكونوا موجودين، وبعد عرض نكمة راح يكون في عندنا كمان كاريوكي. جهزوا حالكم، استعدوا لفعاليات قوية من طريق نكمة.
I love the part where you can talk about it for an hour, you immediately just leave. That was perfect. It was really good. عادي